I stared at the performance review for exactly 37 seconds before setting it down on my desk. The words were there in black and white, printed on company letterhead with my supervisor's signature at the bottom. Lacks initiative, needs improvement in proactive business development, struggles to identify new opportunities without direct guidance. These things happen, I suppose. But as I sat there reading those words, I couldn't help but think about the spreadsheet I'd been updating that morning. The one that showed my direct contributions to the company's revenue stream over the past 18 months. The one that calculated my personal generation of new business at just over $2 million. I'd been with Morrison and Associates for 4 years by that point. Started as a junior business development associate, worked my way up to senior associate, and had been handling some of our most complex client relationships for the better part of 2 years. The company specialized in supply chain optimization for mid-market manufacturing companies, and I developed what I considered a particular expertise in identifying inefficiencies that our software solutions could address. The review meeting had taken place 3 days earlier. My supervisor, Janet Morrison, had called me into her office at 4:30 on a Thursday afternoon. She'd been with the company for 8 years, inherited her position when her predecessor left for a competitor, and had been my direct report for about 18 months. The meeting lasted exactly 12 minutes. She'd gone through the standard performance categories. Communication skills rated as satisfactory. Technical knowledge marked as adequate. Team collaboration noted as acceptable. Then she'd reached the business development section, and her tone had shifted slightly. According to Janet, my approach to new business development lacked the aggressive pursuit of opportunities that the company expected from someone in my position. She'd mentioned that I tended to wait for clear signals from prospects before making my move, rather than creating those opportunities through persistent outreach and relationship building. She'd also noted that my quarterly numbers, while solid, didn't demonstrate the kind of exponential growth that indicated true initiative. I'd sat there listening, nodding occasionally, taking notes on the small pad I always carried to meetings. I'd asked a few clarifying questions about specific metrics and expectations for the coming quarter. I'd thanked her for the feedback and assured her that I would take her observations seriously. What I hadn't mentioned was the pipeline analysis I'd been working on for the past 6 months. The systematic approach I developed for identifying potential clients through industry research, competitive analysis, and targeted networking. The relationships I'd been building with key decision makers at companies that represented exactly the kind of long-term partnerships that could transform our revenue base. I also hadn't mentioned the 3 major deals I'd been cultivating over the past year. Prospects that required patience, technical expertise, and a deep understanding of their operational challenges. Deals that weren't reflected in our quarterly numbers because they operated on 18-month sales cycles rather than the 90-day sprints that our current metrics emphasized. The Hartwell manufacturing opportunity alone represented potential annual revenue of $450,000. Their supply chain complexity required a customized solution that drew on every aspect of our software platform, plus integration services that would establish us as their primary technology partner for the next 5 years. I'd been working that relationship for 14 months, building trust with their operations team, their IT department, and their executive leadership. Then there was the Cascade Industries deal, a family-owned business that had been struggling with inventory management across their 4 facilities. They'd been burned by a previous software implementation that had promised comprehensive integration, but delivered a system that couldn't handle their seasonal fluctuations and product mix variability. I'd spent months understanding their business model, their pain points, and their concerns about making another significant technology investment. The third opportunity was actually a cluster of related prospects. I'd identified a pattern among companies in the automotive supply chain that were facing similar challenges with just-in-time inventory management. Rather than approaching each one individually, I'd been developing a specialized solution framework that could be adapted for multiple clients in that vertical. The research and development time was substantial, but the potential for scalable revenue was significant. None of these opportunities fit neatly into our traditional quarterly reporting structure. They required technical analysis, relationship building, and strategic patience. They also required the kind of industry expertise that I'd been developing through professional development courses, industry conferences, and continuous learning about supply chain technology trends. But according to my performance review, I lacked initiative. I'd been documenting my business development activities in a separate tracking system for about 2 years. Not because anyone had asked me to, but because I'd recognized early on that the standard CRM system we used for sales tracking wasn't designed to capture the kind of long-term relationship building that drove sustainable business growth. I'd created my own spreadsheet that tracked prospect interactions, relationship development, technical analysis, and projected revenue potential. The system had evolved over time. I'd added columns for industry research, competitive positioning, and strategic timing. I'd created formulas that calculated the probability-weighted value of opportunities based on their stage in the development cycle. I'd even built in tracking for the time investment required for each prospect, so I could analyze the efficiency of different approaches. What the system showed was a clear pattern of strategic business development that had generated substantial revenue growth. Not the kind of growth that showed up in monthly sales reports, but the kind that built long-term value for the company. The Meridian Group contract had closed in month 14 of development. Annual revenue of $230,000, with a 3-year commitment that included expansion options. The deal had required 18 months of relationship building, technical analysis, and customized solution development. But it had also established us as the preferred vendor for their parent company's supply chain optimization needs. The Pinnacle Systems implementation had taken even longer to develop, but had resulted in a comprehensive partnership that generated annual revenue of $320,000. More importantly, it had become a showcase installation that we used for prospect demonstrations and case study development. The Atlas manufacturing deal had been the most complex, a multi-facility operation with integrated supply chain requirements that touched every aspect of our software platform. The sales cycle had been 22 months, but the resulting contract was worth $400,000 annually, with built-in expansion clauses that could double that revenue over the next 3 years. I documented every aspect of these deals, the initial research that had identified them as prospects, the relationship-building activities that had established trust and credibility, the technical analysis that had demonstrated our capabilities, the customized proposals that had addressed their specific needs, the negotiation process that had secured favorable terms for both parties. What I'd built was a comprehensive record of strategic business development that had generated over $2 million in new revenue for Morrison & Associates, revenue that was now a foundational part of our annual projections and client base. But my performance review indicated that I lacked initiative. I spent the weekend reviewing my documentation, not because I was angry exactly, but because I wanted to make sure I understood the full scope of what I'd accomplished. I also wanted to understand how the perception of my performance could be so different from the measurable results I delivered. The disconnect seemed to center on activity versus results. Our current performance metrics emphasize visible activity: calls made, emails sent, meetings scheduled, proposals submitted. The measurements were designed to track effort and ensure that business development professionals were maintaining consistent outreach to prospects. My approach had been different. Rather than maximizing the number of prospects I contacted, I'd focused on identifying the highest value opportunities and investing the time necessary to develop them properly. Instead of sending generic proposals to every potential client, I'd created customized solutions that addressed specific operational challenges. The result was fewer tracked activities but substantially higher revenue generation. I'd made fewer calls but had longer, more substantive conversations. I'd sent fewer emails but had written more detailed technical analysis. I'd scheduled fewer meetings but had spent more time in strategic discussions with key decision makers. From a metrics standpoint, my activity levels probably did look lower than expected. From a results standpoint, my revenue generation was exceptional. I'd also been thinking about the timing of my performance review. We were in the middle of budget planning season, and there had been discussions about reorganizing the business development team. Several companies in our industry had been implementing new sales methodologies that emphasize rapid pipeline development and shorter sales cycles. There was also the matter of my salary progression. I'd received solid increases over the past 4 years, but my compensation had reached a level where it probably stood out during budget reviews. A senior associate generating exceptional results commands a higher salary than someone who meets standard expectations. If the goal was to reduce costs or justify organizational changes, then reframing my performance as lacking initiative would certainly support those objectives. But I'd been in this industry long enough to understand that sustainable revenue growth required long-term relationship building. The companies that focused exclusively on quarterly metrics and rapid sales cycles often struggled to build the kind of client partnerships that generated predictable revenue over multiple years. I'd seen what happened when experienced professionals were replaced by lower-cost alternatives who emphasized activity over results. Initial cost savings were often offset by client attrition, reduced deal sizes, and increased competition for price-sensitive opportunities. On Monday morning, I started making copies of my documentation, not because I was planning anything specific, but because I wanted to have complete records of my contributions to the company's success. I printed out the revenue analysis, the deal tracking spreadsheets, and the client relationship summaries. I also started updating my professional portfolio, the certifications I'd earned, the industry research I'd conducted, the case studies I'd developed, the speaking engagements I'd participated in, and the industry recognition I'd received for innovative approaches to supply chain optimization. It occurred to me that I'd been so focused on generating results for Morrison & Associates that I hadn't been particularly strategic about documenting my professional achievements. The work had been rewarding and the compensation had been adequate, so I'd simply focused on doing excellent work rather than building a case for my value. But now it seemed prudent to have a comprehensive record of my contributions and capabilities. I also began paying closer attention to the broader organizational dynamics at Morrison & Associates. The budget discussions, the strategic planning meetings, the conversations about market positioning and competitive advantage. The company was profitable and growing, but there were clearly pressures around cost management and operational efficiency. Janet had been in several meetings with the executive team about sales methodology and performance metrics. There had been discussions about standardizing the business development process and implementing new tracking systems that would provide better visibility into pipeline development and revenue forecasting. The challenge was that our most successful deals didn't fit neatly into standardized processes. They required industry expertise, technical analysis, and strategic patience. They also required the kind of relationship building that couldn't be easily measured or replicated. But standardization was simpler to manage and less expensive to implement than maintaining a team of experienced professionals who operated with significant autonomy. I wasn't the only senior associate who had been receiving feedback about activity levels and process compliance. Two of my colleagues had mentioned similar conversations with their supervisors. The emphasis seemed to be shifting toward metrics that could be easily tracked and compared across team members. There was also the matter of new hiring. The company had brought in several junior associates over the past 6 months, and there had been discussions about the cost-effectiveness of developing internal talent versus hiring experienced professionals from competitors. The mathematics were straightforward. A junior associate could be hired at roughly 60% of my salary. With proper training and process implementation, they could potentially generate 70% of my results. From a cost-benefit perspective, that equation looked attractive. But the analysis didn't account for the relationship equity I'd built with existing clients, the industry expertise I'd developed, or the strategic value of the complex deals I'd been cultivating. It also didn't account for the risk of losing momentum on long-term opportunities that required institutional knowledge and established credibility. 3 weeks after my performance review, I received an email from HR requesting a meeting to discuss professional development opportunities. The message was brief and professional, but it arrived at an interesting time. We were in the final stages of budget approval for the coming fiscal year, and there had been several closed-door meetings about organizational restructuring. The HR meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday at 10 in the morning. I spent the intervening time updating my documentation and preparing a comprehensive summary of my professional contributions to Morrison & Associates. I also did some research on industry compensation standards and competitive positioning for professionals with my experience and track record. Not because I was planning to make demands, but because I wanted to understand the market context for my value proposition. What I discovered was that my revenue generation per dollar of compensation was substantially higher than industry averages. My client retention rates were exceptional. My deal sizes were consistently above company medians. My technical expertise was recognized by clients and industry peers. From an objective standpoint, I represented significant value for Morrison & Associates. The HR meeting was conducted by Sarah Chen, who had been with the company for about 3 years and handled professional development and performance management. She'd been involved in several organizational changes during her tenure and had a reputation for being thorough and fair in her approach. Sarah began by reviewing my tenure with the company and my progression through various roles. She acknowledged my technical expertise and client relationships and noted that my revenue generation had been consistently strong. She also mentioned that my professional development activities and industry involvement had contributed to the company's reputation and market positioning. Then she shifted to discussing performance expectations and evolving business requirements. She explained that Morrison & Associates was implementing new sales methodologies that would standardize the business development process and provide better visibility into pipeline management. She also mentioned that the company was focused on optimizing cost structures and improving operational efficiency. The conversation was professional and measured. Sarah asked about my career goals and my interest in adapting to new processes and metrics. She also inquired about my flexibility regarding role responsibilities and performance expectations. I responded that I was committed to contributing to the company's success and was interested in understanding how my expertise could best serve the organization's evolving needs. I also mentioned that I had been tracking my professional activities and results in detail and would be happy to provide additional documentation of my contributions. Sarah indicated that she would be conducting similar meetings with several team members as part of the annual performance review process. She also mentioned that there might be opportunities for role redefinition or additional responsibilities based on the outcomes of these discussions. The meeting concluded with Sarah requesting that I prepare a comprehensive summary of my professional contributions and future objectives. She indicated that this information would be helpful for planning discussions and would ensure that my capabilities were properly understood by the management team. I spent the next week preparing what I considered to be a complete professional portfolio. The revenue analysis that documented my generation of over $2 million in new business. The client relationship summaries that demonstrated long-term partnership development. The industry research and technical analysis that had supported complex deal development. I also included documentation of my professional development activities, the certifications I'd earned, the conferences I'd attended, the industry publications I'd contributed to, the speaking engagements and panel discussions that had positioned Morrison & Associates as a thought leader in supply chain optimization. The portfolio was comprehensive but organized. Each section included executive summaries, detailed analysis, and supporting documentation. I'd also created visual presentations that demonstrated revenue trends, client relationship development, and strategic positioning. What the portfolio showed was a clear pattern of strategic business development that had generated substantial value for Morrison & Associates, not just in terms of immediate revenue, but in terms of long-term client relationships, industry positioning, and competitive advantage. I submitted the portfolio to Sarah on Friday afternoon, along with a brief cover letter that summarized my commitment to the company's success and my interest in contributing to future growth initiatives. The following Monday, I received another email from HR. This one was more formal in tone and requested a meeting to discuss my professional portfolio and potential organizational changes. The meeting was scheduled for Wednesday at 2 p.m. and would include Sarah as well as Janet Morrison. I spent Tuesday evening reviewing my documentation one more time, not because I was nervous exactly, but because I wanted to ensure that I could speak confidently about every aspect of my professional contributions. I also wanted to be prepared for questions about my approach to business development and my willingness to adapt to new processes. The Wednesday meeting was held in the main conference room rather than Sarah's office. Janet was already seated when I arrived, reviewing a folder of documents. Sarah joined us a few minutes later, carrying what appeared to be a comprehensive file. Sarah began by acknowledging the quality and completeness of my professional portfolio. She noted that my documentation of revenue generation and client relationship development was exceptional, and that my contributions to the company's growth had been substantial. She also mentioned that my analysis had prompted additional discussions about performance metrics and the relationship between activity tracking and results generation. The management team had been reviewing various approaches to business development evaluation, and my portfolio had provided valuable insights into the limitations of purely activity-based measurements. Janet then spoke about the evolution of business development practices and the company's interest in optimizing both results and processes. She acknowledged that my approach had been effective in generating significant revenue, but noted that it didn't align perfectly with the standardized methodologies that the company was implementing. She also mentioned that there had been discussions about role specialization and the possibility of creating dedicated positions for different aspects of business development. Some team members might focus on initial prospect identification and qualification, while others might specialize in complex deal development and client relationship management. Sarah then outlined several options for my professional development. The first was to continue in my current role while adapting to new processes and metrics. This would require more structured activity tracking and regular reporting on pipeline development. The second option was to transition to a specialized role focused on complex deal development. This would involve working with prospects that had been initially qualified by other team members, but would allow me to focus on the relationship building and technical analysis that had been most successful for me. The third option was to take on a leadership role in developing new business development methodologies. This would involve training other team members, creating standardized processes, and establishing best practices for different types of opportunities. Each option had different compensation structures and performance expectations. The leadership role offered the highest potential compensation, but also required the most significant change in daily responsibilities. I listened carefully to each option and asked clarifying questions about expectations, timelines, and success metrics. I also inquired about the company's long-term strategic plans and how each role would contribute to organizational objectives. What became clear during the conversation was that Morrison & Associates was at an inflection point. The company had grown significantly over the past few years and was now large enough to require more structured processes and specialized roles. The entrepreneurial approach that had characterized much of our business development was being replaced by more systematic methodologies. This wasn't necessarily a negative development. Larger organizations often benefit from standardization and specialization, but it did represent a fundamental shift in how the company approached business development and measured success. At the end of the meeting, Sarah indicated that I should take some time to consider the various options and their implications for my career development. She also mentioned that the decision didn't need to be made immediately, but that the company was planning to implement organizational changes over the next few months. I spent the following week thinking about each option and researching similar transitions at other companies in our industry. I also had informal conversations with several colleagues who had experience with different business development approaches. What I concluded was that each option represented a different career trajectory with distinct advantages and challenges. The traditional role modification would allow me to maintain existing client relationships, but would require adaptation to new processes that might not align with my most successful approaches. The specialized role would leverage my expertise in complex deal development, but would limit my involvement in initial prospect identification and qualification. This could be effective if the company developed strong processes for identifying and qualifying opportunities, but could also result in a narrower scope of client interaction. The leadership role offered the most significant growth potential, but would require transitioning from individual contributor to team developer. This could be rewarding if I had the opportunity to shape business development practices, but could also remove me from direct client interaction. I also considered a fourth option that hadn't been explicitly discussed: the possibility of leveraging my expertise and client relationships to pursue opportunities outside Morrison & Associates. My portfolio had demonstrated that I generated substantial value for the company, but it had also documented my professional capabilities and industry standing. The client relationships I'd developed, the industry expertise I'd acquired, and the revenue generation I'd achieved represented significant professional capital. Several companies in our industry were actively recruiting experienced business development professionals. The demand for supply chain optimization expertise was growing, and there were opportunities with larger firms, specialized consultancies, and emerging technology companies. There were also entrepreneurial opportunities. The industry research I'd conducted and the solution frameworks I'd developed could potentially be leveraged to create independent consulting services or specialized software solutions. But before considering external opportunities, I wanted to understand the full scope of what Morrison & Associates was offering and whether there was a path forward that would allow me to continue contributing to the company's success while advancing my own career objectives. I requested a follow-up meeting with Sarah to discuss the various options in more detail and to explore potential modifications that might better align with my expertise and the company's needs. The follow-up meeting was scheduled for the following Tuesday. I spent the intervening time preparing a detailed analysis of each option, including my assessment of the potential benefits and challenges for both myself and the company. I also prepared a counter-proposal that combined elements of the specialized role and the leadership position. This would involve focusing on complex deal development while also contributing to the development of business development methodologies and training programs. The counterproposal emphasized my commitment to Morrison & Associates, while also recognizing the value of my expertise and experience. It was designed to leverage my strengths while supporting the company's evolution toward more structured business development practices. When I arrived for the Tuesday meeting, Sarah was accompanied by Michael Chen, the company's director of business development, who had been involved in the strategic planning discussions. This indicated that the conversation had escalated beyond routine performance management. Michael began by acknowledging my contributions to the company's growth and the quality of my professional portfolio. He noted that my revenue generation had been exceptional and that my client relationships represented significant assets for Morrison & Associates. He also mentioned that my documentation had sparked important discussions about performance measurement and business development effectiveness. The management team had been reviewing the relationship between activity metrics and revenue generation and had recognized that the current system didn't adequately capture the value of strategic, long-term business development. Sarah then outlined a modified proposal that incorporated elements of my counterproposal while addressing the company's organizational needs. The role would focus on complex deal development and strategic client relationship management, while also involving the development of training programs and best practices for other team members. The compensation structure would recognize both individual revenue generation and team development contributions. The performance metrics would emphasize results over activity while still providing visibility into business development progress. Michael also mentioned that the company was planning to establish a Business Development Excellence Center that would be responsible for developing specialized approaches to different types of opportunities. This center would work with all team members to optimize their effectiveness while maintaining the flexibility needed for complex deals. The proposed role would position me as a senior contributor to this center while allowing me to continue focusing on the relationship building and strategic analysis that had been most successful for me. The offer was comprehensive and addressed most of my concerns about role evolution and performance measurement. It recognized my expertise while supporting the company's need for more structured business development practices. I indicated that I was interested in the proposal, but would like to review the details carefully before making a commitment. Sarah provided me with a written summary of the offer, including compensation details, performance expectations, and timeline for implementation. I spent the next few days reviewing the proposal and consulting with professional mentors about the implications of the role change. The offer was attractive and represented a clear path for career advancement within Morrison & Associates. But I also wanted to understand the broader context of the organizational changes and ensure that the new role would provide the stability and growth potential I was seeking. I also decided to conduct some due diligence on the company's financial position and strategic direction. The reorganization of the business development team suggested that Morrison & Associates was responding to market pressures or competitive challenges. What I discovered was that the company was performing well financially, but was facing increased competition from larger firms and specialized technology providers. The supply chain optimization market was evolving rapidly, and companies were increasingly looking for comprehensive solutions rather than point products. Morrison & Associates had the technical capabilities to compete effectively, but needed to scale its business development capabilities to access larger opportunities and develop more strategic client relationships. The proposed organizational changes were designed to address these challenges by creating specialized roles that could focus on different aspects of business development while maintaining the high-touch relationship building that had been successful for complex deals. From this perspective, the offer represented an opportunity to play a significant role in the company's evolution while leveraging my expertise in strategic business development. I accepted the offer on Friday afternoon, with a start date of the beginning of the following month. This would provide time for transition planning and initial development of the Business Development Excellence Center. The transition period was productive. I worked with Sarah and Michael to develop role descriptions, performance metrics, and training programs for the new organizational structure. I also began documenting my approaches to complex deal development so that they could be shared with other team members. The Business Development Excellence Center launched with 3 core functions: strategic opportunity identification, complex deal development, and client relationship management. Each function had specialized processes and metrics that were designed to optimize effectiveness while maintaining the flexibility needed for different types of opportunities. My role as Senior Business Development Specialist focused on complex deals and strategic relationships, while also contributing to the development of best practices and training programs. The position allowed me to leverage my expertise while supporting the company's growth objectives. The new performance metrics emphasized results over activity, with measurements that included revenue generation, client satisfaction, deal complexity, and strategic value. This approach provided better alignment between individual contributions and organizational objectives. 6 months after the organizational changes were implemented, Morrison and Associates had achieved significant improvements in business development effectiveness. Revenue generation had increased by 35%, client satisfaction scores had improved, and the average deal size had grown substantially. The company had also successfully expanded into new market segments and established partnerships with larger clients that had previously been beyond our reach. The specialized approach to business development had enabled more strategic and comprehensive client relationships. My individual performance had also improved under the new structure. The focus on complex deals and strategic relationships had allowed me to leverage my expertise more effectively, and the support provided by the Business Development Excellence Center had increased my overall productivity. The revenue I generated in my first year in the new role exceeded $3 million, representing a 50% increase over my previous best performance. This was achieved through a combination of larger deal sizes, higher client retention rates, and more strategic relationship development. But the most significant change was in the quality of my work experience. The new role provided better alignment between my expertise and my responsibilities, while also offering opportunities for professional growth and leadership development. The recognition of my contributions had also improved. Rather than being evaluated based on activity metrics that didn't capture the value of strategic business development, I was measured on results that reflected my actual impact on the company's success. The feedback from clients had been consistently positive. They appreciated the technical expertise and strategic perspective I brought to their supply chain optimization challenges, and several had expanded their relationships with Morrison and Associates based on the value we provided. The industry recognition had also increased. I was invited to speak at conferences about strategic business development and supply chain optimization, and had been featured in industry publications as an expert in complex deal development. Looking back on the experience, I realized that the initial performance review that had characterized my work as lacking initiative had actually been a catalyst for positive change. It had forced me to document my contributions systematically and to articulate the value of strategic business development. The process had also helped Morrison and Associates recognize the limitations of purely activity-based performance metrics and the importance of aligning individual expertise with organizational objectives. The outcome had been beneficial for both the company and for my professional development. Morrison and Associates had improved its business development effectiveness and expanded its market reach, while I had gained recognition for my expertise and advanced my career within the organization. The experience had also reinforced my belief in the importance of documentation and systematic analysis of professional contributions. The portfolio I had developed had been essential in demonstrating my value and had provided the foundation for constructive discussions about role evolution and performance measurement. It had also taught me the importance of understanding organizational dynamics and being proactive in addressing performance concerns. Rather than simply accepting the initial feedback, I had taken the initiative to document my contributions and propose solutions that addressed both individual and organizational needs. The situation had required patience, strategic thinking, and professional persistence. But the outcome had validated my approach to business development and had resulted in improved recognition and career advancement. Most importantly, the experience had demonstrated that professional expertise and strategic thinking could overcome initial misconceptions and organizational challenges. The key was to remain focused on results, maintain professional standards, and be willing to adapt to evolving organizational needs while staying true to proven capabilities. The success of the Business Development Excellence Center had also created opportunities for other team members to advance their careers and contribute more effectively to the company's growth. The specialized roles and improved processes had enabled everyone to focus on their strengths while supporting collective objectives. Morrison and Associates had emerged from the organizational transition as a stronger and more competitive company, with improved capabilities and better alignment between individual expertise and business requirements. The company was now positioned to pursue larger opportunities and develop more strategic client relationships. For my part, I had gained valuable experience in organizational change management and had developed leadership capabilities that would serve me well in future roles. The experience had also reinforced my commitment to continuous professional development and strategic thinking. The documentation and analysis skills I had developed during the transition had become valuable assets that I continued to use in my ongoing role. The systematic approach to tracking contributions and measuring results had proven to be effective for both individual performance management and organizational planning. Looking forward, I was optimistic about the opportunities for continued growth and contribution at Morrison & Associates. The company had demonstrated its commitment to recognizing and developing professional expertise and had created structures that supported both individual success and organizational objectives. The experience had also provided me with insights into business development effectiveness that I could share with other professionals in the industry. The lessons learned about performance measurement, organizational change, and strategic business development had broader applications beyond my specific situation. In the end, what had initially appeared to be a negative performance review had actually been the beginning of a positive transformation that had benefited everyone involved. The key had been to approach the situation strategically, document contributions systematically, and maintain focus on results rather than process. The outcome had validated my belief that professional expertise and strategic thinking could overcome organizational challenges and create opportunities for mutual success. It had also demonstrated the importance of clear communication, comprehensive documentation, and constructive engagement with performance management processes. The experience had ultimately strengthened my relationship with Morrison & Associates and had provided a foundation for continued professional growth and contribution. The company had gained a better understanding of strategic business development, while I had gained recognition for my expertise and expanded my role within the organization. The lessons learned from this experience continue to inform my approach to professional development and organizational contribution. The importance of systematic documentation, strategic thinking, and constructive engagement with performance management processes has been reinforced through subsequent experiences and continued success. The story serves as a reminder that professional challenges can become opportunities for growth and improvement when approached with the right mindset and systematic preparation. The key is to remain focused on results, maintain professional standards, and be willing to adapt while staying true to proven capabilities and expertise.